Hello, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland. Hello, respected viewers. It's George from Ireland. So, commenting on these drone strikes on Moscow. So, the war has been going for just over 15 months now. And this is the second time that Moscow has been hit by drones. But remember, the Kremlin was hit by just one drone. I think it was the 3rd of May, so shortly before the Victory Day parade. And people saying, was that even a false flag? Did the Russians do it to themselves? Widely thought to be unlikely to be Russia doing it to themselves because it was just so humiliating that their Holy of Holies could be hit by a drone, even though it did superficial damage. And now several drones, reports only been between 2 drones and 35 drones. So I'd go towards the bottom end of that estimate as the most likely one. I mean, 35 drones, I think, is very high, given that, say, Russia's launched 40 drones at most on one night at Kiev. And obviously, Ukraine, being only about a quarter of the population of Russia, just wouldn't have the capacity to launch quite so many as 35 drones at a time. So bear in mind that a few of them were confirmed to be shot down, others of them not, and again did minimal damage to unimportant buildings, just residential blocks on Leninsky Prospect, this area of southern Moscow, of no strategic significance. Is believed that possibly a target was this missile command center and the Rublovka to the west of Moscow, only a few kilometers from President Putin's main compound, right beside the Moscow River. I remember when I was in Moscow, on these sort of maps like Google Maps or whatever, it was all blanked out, just a grey area where he was. You used to find that your phone went wonky when you're anywhere around there. There's some sort of jamming devices. So it seems not to have killed anyone. The mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, he's confirmed that yes, these attacks took place, but he's chosen to de-emphasize it, just like they did when there was that drone attack actually struck the Kremlin, because they don't want there to be panic stations. So obviously, it's deeply humiliating for them. Bear in mind that that Moscow is at 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and how on earth do these drones penetrate so far? There's another theory is that Ukrainian agents deep inside Russia who are with the drones, even manufacturing them and launching them, I don't know. Is it Russian freedom fighters, as in anti-Putin people who are doing it? Possibly. But Kiev has disavowed this, maybe because it's really not them, but whether it's them or not, why would they disavow it? Well, often they've refused to confirm or deny. Partly because they think, well, then Russia will use this as an excuse for some other atrocity. Oh, this is escalatory. Well, I mean, Russia actually started the war, has escalated all the time, is the one that's attacked civilian targets on hundreds of occasions, and I mean hundreds, as in hospitals, schools, clinics, a large-scale massacre of a few hundred civilians murdered at Bucha, often with their hands tied up, a civilian bomb shelter, and a theater marked children. To be fair to the Russians, if you had military personnel, you might well mark it children because you don't want to be killed. You don't expect your enemy to tell you the truth, and so on. And there was one drone the first time, several drones this time. Presumably, it's going to get more and more. And though it hasn't done much damage, it can do more. And Putin is trying to keep life in Russia going as normal, that is not to negatively affect standards of living. Well, that's gone. This idea is the war to make Russia safer. It's made it less safe. Okay, no one has bombarded Moscow for 80 years, and then Putin comes along making it safer, in which case a foreign country is actually bombarding them. I mean, I know Chechen insurgents have set off bombs in Moscow and killed civilians. Incidentally, some of these Ukrainian drones, if indeed they are Ukrainian, hit civilian targets, which of course I would never countenance. Was it by accident or design? I don't know. And Putin's strategy is imbecilic because clearly this is not breaking Ukraine. His missile attacks, drone attacks, they're just completely ineffective. They killed 2 civilians one night in Kiev and wounded 3, if the Ukrainian authorities are to be believed. I mean, if they're killing civilians, I suppose the Ukrainian authorities might announce quite a few deaths to garner world sympathy, to show how wicked the Russian government is. But on the other hand, would that demoralize their people? Well, just possibly. I think they probably would tell the truth because they've had no hesitation in revealing atrocities committed by the enemy. I think it'll simply bolster the will to fight. Anyways, they're just going to be more attacks like this on Moscow because there have been several nights lately with drone attacks on Kiev. 14 nights so far this month, this May. Uh, and if Putin actually reserved his fire for the Ukrainian military, that might have some effect. But they're just randomly destroying tower blocks, and the Ukrainians are sometimes going down into the metro to shelter. Some people just stay in their flat, saying that the chance of actually being killed by these drone strikes is infinitesimally small. You're more likely to be hit by a lightning strike, and so it continues. So it was always very worrying for Russia. And what else could they do? But anyway, these aerial attacks on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities are just not breaking people. There was one that was fairly effective where they rendered 5 military planes inoperable. Now that was a success. Why not throw everything at air bases, at army bases, and so on? And that might actually pay dividends. But they're maybe just lashing out in fury. They've taken Bakhmut. You think they might be able to fan out and attack in other sectors, which is one of the reasons why the Ukrainians were so keen to keep the battle in Bakhmut going for so long, rather than the Russians to have the numbers to attack in other areas, or indeed probably now to strengthen their defensive lines. And they're just really out of ideas, just trying to stretch the war out into 2024, into 2025, hoping Trump would come back or Ron DeSantis would come back or various Western countries, including the United States, will tire of funding and arming Ukraine. Remember, it's obviously the United States Congress controls the power of the purse, not the president. Even if Biden is re-elected, which is probable, there might be a Congress which is hostile to him, Republican-dominated Congress, so he might not get the funding that he wants. But Lindsey Graham, one of the most senior figures in the Republican Party, a contender for the nomination back in 2016, he visited Kiev lately, and he's a hawk on the Ukrainian issue, saying, no, we must back the Ukrainians to the hilt. There's also a way to save Taiwan, to show would-be aggressors that you'll pay a very heavy price, that we will not give up easily. But as for Taiwan, any military equipment Taiwan wants from the United States, they better buy it now, ship it in now, because once a war were to begin, the United States and other countries might not sell it, or if they did sell it, how are you going to transport it in? I mean, it might be sunk if it's being shipped in to Taiwan. Planes carrying military equipment might be shot down to get it in like now. I mean, maybe they are just not telling us. But part of the reason, but the advantage of telling people is then a deterrent to frighten off the Chinese, saying, going to be too costly or impossible, this war. So I expect that this aerial bombardment is going to continue. With lots of these Shahed Iranian drones. The Iranians claim that they have sold Shahed, as in Martyr drones, to the Russians, but stopped doing so before the war began in February 2002. I don't believe that, although I don't know it to be bogus. It may be unfalsifiable. So clearly isn't breaking Ukrainian morale. Over the winter, when they're taking out their electricity, freezing people to death, that might have worked. It didn't. It failed. And during the summer, it really seems to be sheer spite. Thank you very much for watching the channel. So please subscribe on PayPal. Well, on Patreon, donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Bye.